So, Key, do you agree that Rodgers will be must-see TV with the Steelers?
Yeah, for better or for worse. That's gonna be it. Like when I started looking when you started talking about that. So, if he stinks up the joint, guess what? We're gonna be watching to see him stink up the joint. People gonna hate watch. And if he's balling and all of a sudden there's a resurgence in his career, we gonna be all in watching that. So, you know, in the end, I think he'll do just fine. But I started looking at the schedule. I'm like, you can't tell me people ain't gonna tune in September 7th against the Jets. They're gonna be watching.
We're gonna be there.
Then the Minnesota September.
You got the thing set up, right? You got
the Jet,
the suite.
Oh, the suite. Oh, okay. I thought you meant the Jet. I was like, okay.
Yeah, the Jet too.
Yeah, we got all that. We're gonna have all that. Yeah,
Mr. Jet.
No, we're gonna do the show from New York.
Yeah,
they got a studio in New York. So September 28th.
Tyler's in.
Tyler's in. September 28th, though, Joy?
We got to set up a producer cam. Like, I keep asking for this, but we
September 28th, they play Minnesota. He played against Minnesota. He almost went to Minnesota. That's people going to want to see that. Right? Now you drop down, October 26th, they got Green Bay.
Yeah.
People going to tune in for that.
All the montages.
So everything, you think about those things and you start looking, you're like, oh, yeah, you're going to tune in. Must-see TV. They also play Chicago on November 23rd at Chicago. They're going to tune in for that.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, when you think about Aaron Rodgers, who's the next, like, OG after Aaron that's left of that generation? I mean, Russ is not, sort of.
No, Russ.
Russ is what, 30? How old is Russ? 36 years old?
That's an OG compared to the other quarterbacks.
Compared to the other ones, but 36 and 41 is just, I guess, Kirk Cousins.
Yeah.
But, like, he was never in that
level.
Like,
yeah, but
like,
that's what I'm saying. So,
I'm saying,
so
like,
it
Aaron
is Russ.
Is really, like, yeah.
I mean, obviously, Aaron is at the 10th floor and Russ is on the 8th floor. But they both won championships.
Yeah. I guess Russ is the closest to that, but I think of Aaron as a little bit closer to the, Peyton, Brady, Roethlisberger kind of era, even though he's obviously younger than them. But he's closer to that era for me. But I mean, I understand.
Other than Russ, that's it, huh? They got to be the two oldest.
Kirk is probably that around.
Yeah, but nobody's talking about Kirk, like you said.
Flacco.
Yeah, nobody talking about Flacco.
She's a champion.
I know, but
I'm talking about the level of Aaron Rodgers. It's absolutely going to be must-see TV, no matter whether it's good or it's bad.
Yeah.
The games that you mentioned will be absolutely marketed in a way that this is the final Aaron Rodgers matchup against the Chicago Bears, who he's owned. This is the starting of the season against the Jets, the team that he just left. This is, his matchup against the Green Bay Packers. Will have all of his highlights and montages. Like, for whatever Aaron Rodgers is, which is a lot, he is someone who at one point in his career was a spectacular watch from a football perspective. Now, if we're talking about what it's going to look like on the field, I mean, my expectations are not very high, obviously.
But you're going to watch.
I'm going to watch regardless because this is the Steelers.
Yeah.
But I think that he has the potential to have some moments. I already have said many times I don't have major expectations for the Steelers this year. I think the ceiling is a playoff berth and maybe a playoff win. But as far as watching one of the greatest to ever do it in his, what we are assuming last year in the NFL, we're going to be tuning in.
Woo! This is absolutely must-see TV. Listen, these are two shows I'm going to be watching, Joy. Love Island and the Real QBs of the NFL reality show, starring Rodgers, Purdy because of his contract, Lamar Jackson, Mahomes, and Shedeur. I will be tuning in to all of these guys during this show. So look for it. I'm going to have it on YouTube, boom, boom, Fox, everything, boom, boom.
Boom, boom.
I feel like that's a good graphic.
Locked in.
You could build that, though. So the Real Housewives of the NFL.
The Real QBs of the NFL.
Oh, the Real QB, sorry.
Starring Rodgers, Purdy, Jackson, Mahomes, and Shedeur. That's a good one.
I feel like you got to put Joe Burrow in there.
He'll be in later.
He'll be an addition.
Yeah.
He'll be a new bombshell to enter the villa. Okay.
Yeah.
Tua before Joe Burrow.
I don't know. I'm trying to think the drama is.
Tua before Joe Burrow. Because of the drama, Tua, all of a sudden, you know, he's a different dude now.
Interesting. You know what? Maybe this is our list. We're in list season. Maybe the list is our who would we cast for our real quarterbacks of the NFL?
That could be, that's something.
That's a good list.
That is.
Rodgers said that DK Metcalf was one of the main reasons he signed in Pittsburgh. The Steelers traded for DK Metcalf this offseason and signed him to a 4-year extension. But he's not the only big-name wideout in a new spot heading into this season. Deebo Samuel is now a Commander. Davante Adams is now on the Rams. And former Steeler George Pickens is now with the Cowboys. So, Keith, you are the spokesperson for outrageous wide receiver behavior.
Stop!
Which you wrote the book. You have the book. It's right there.
You're going to have these people really thinking I'm like that, but go ahead.
How are you going to explain that? Which one of these guys will have the biggest impact this season?
As the new WRs coming in, switching teams?
Yeah.
I think it's Davante Adams. When you think about Davante paired with Tutu Atwell, along with Puka, Matthew Stafford, you put that group out on the field, they're going to put in some work. Now, clearly, you think about Deebo and Scary Terry once they get that deal done and get him some new money in there. And you talk about Stephon Diggs, which I don't think much of what New England is going to do with him. I just don't trust what they're capable of doing with him in New England, so I don't think he's going to have a major impact. One thing I know about Sean McVay, he puts the receivers in the right position to make plays and help the team. You know, and some of these other guys, obviously Deebo Samuel is, you know, a Swiss Army knife with Cliff Kingsbury and Anthony Lynn over there running things on the offensive side for Washington. So you could always say that. I don't know what Arthur Smith is going to do with Aaron Rodgers and DK Metcalf. I have no idea.
Yeah.
And so is Davante Adams. Here's a guy with 6 seasons of 1,000+ yards. You know, he led the NFL twice with touchdown receptions, a 3-time Pro Bowler, 6-time All-Pro. So when you switch it, 3-time All-Pro, 6-time Pro Bowler, when you just talk about the juice that he still has left, is a lot. You look at him the second half of the season for the New York Jets when he came over from the Raiders. After he got, you know, pretty much familiar with the situation in New York, he turned into a different player for them. And so I see Sean doing some wonders with him. That's why they allowed Cooper Kupp to leave, and they immediately signed Davante Adams when he became available.
Yeah, I'm in agreement, Key. I picked the same one in Davante because, you know, I'm a Rams fan. Of course, the brilliant McVay and the things he can do offensively. And when I look at these other receivers, he has the best resume, especially last year. He racked up more yards. He gets more targets. And I'm sure they'll create, you know, a lot of opportunities because you have Puka Nacua over there, because you have Stafford as your quarterback and McVay as, you know, the head spearing everything that comes with the offense. So, excuse me. Oh. So, yeah, it was a sneeze coming on. It went away. It went away. But like I said, yeah, for me, it's Davante. And I'm sure him going to the Rams after what he's been through over the last couple of years will re-energize him. You know, when you go to a Jets organization that didn't fulfill expectations, he was with the Raiders that just kind of wasn't going anywhere. Yeah. And now you have, you know, the motivation, a team that you feel like can really fight for a Super Bowl. And so when you have that behind you, it really puts a battery pack in the players back in the offseason to really be motivated. And I'm going to see a more motivated Adams this year, I believe.
Yeah, I mean, when we're looking at the guys that moved in Deebo, DK, Davante, and George Pickens, Davante had the best season last year, and he has the biggest resume. I would like to pick Davante too, but just to keep it spicy around here, I do think that Deebo is going to have a big impact.
No, he will have a big impact.
I think he's going to change a bit of how that offense looks. He provides a real physical presence for them. And, you know, they, as amazing as Jaden was last year, we expect him to take a step up this year, and having an option like Deebo out there with you alongside a speedster and an incredibly talented Terry McLaurin, I think it's a great combination that will end up making big waves this year when we're talking about wide receiver combinations. And Deebo is he's so versatile as a player that there's so many different ways that you can use him, and they have so much creativity on their offense because of the way that their offense is set up from a coordinator perspective. I think Deebo can do amazing things. But yeah, obviously I expect big things from Davante this year. I have no idea what DK is going to look like in that offense with Aaron Rodgers. So maybe it's great, maybe it's not. We don't know. And George, well, I think will have a big impact. You're still fighting for targets with CeeDee Lamb. Yeah. So we'll see how they end up using all these guys, but I think Davante will have a big resurgence and play a big
the receivers that play with Matthew Stafford, they die and they go to heaven in a heartbeat. Yeah. I mean, that's just, when you just look at them, because every time you look up and he's throwing the ball, it's like a handoff.
Yeah, he's about as pure as it gets in the league right now.
Good. I mean, he's really good.
Yeah.
Even though he's older.
That's why he's in the going to be in the 400 milli club. Sticking in the AFC North, Browns wide receiver Deontay Johnson gave his 2 cents about the team's quarterback battle between Kenny Pickett, Shedeur Sanders, Dylan Gabriel, and Joe Flacco. And he said, I think they're going to roll with Kenny. Johnson also said he's seen Pickett taking more snaps with the ones. So he would be a mistake for Pickett to start over Shedeur.
Not necessarily. He's first one there out of the quarterbacks. They brought him in, right? And, when you look at it, I don't know what they did in OTAs. I don't know what they did in minicamp. Training camp is coming up. He'll get the early reps. Shedeur could push him. But typically when you get the early reps, they start at some point, start focusing in on the season. They don't have time to mess around if you're not doing the things that they ask you to do at the start of training camp. And you're not out there just spitting the ball out, boom, 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 and making the coaches rethink once they go back in their meeting rooms after practice. And if you're not doing that, they're going to stay with Kenny Pickett. If Shedeur does that and I'm not going to make it very difficult, because I was going to say something else I didn't feel like hearing Paul's mouth, but make it very difficult for them to make a decision on the quarterback position. Now, don't start with me, Paul. A lot can change, though. I mean, a lot can change. If he's giving them everything in the classroom and he's doing it out on the field and then he does it in preseason, it could change their mind in a heartbeat. And I understand what he's saying about that, but he also played with Kenny Pickett in Pittsburgh. So, he kind of sees it. He's been around the block. Now, I don't even know if he'll be there to even see it go through, though. That's one thing I can say about Deontay Johnson. Will he even be there to see if Kenny Pickett going to be the starter?
Yeah.
Wow. This is going to be one of the most unique quarterback situations, I think, throughout the season. I think they're going to be probably the only team that's going to use all the quarterbacks they have on the roster at some point. At some point.
They're using all the quarterbacks on the roster, they're going to be in trouble.
Well, that means you're not going to be not good
at all.
Not good. So you want to get a look. And I look at this as a season to where you can see what you got. So it doesn't matter. You go with Pickett because he has the most experience outside of Flacco. Flacco is there kind of like, seems like he's like kind of like a mentor, a guy that you can kind of lean on for advice or, reads or whatever you need him to. So you go with the guy who's has the most NFL experience. As the season go along, you want to see what you got. So you're going to throw guys out there at different times. So it's not a mistake. I think Shedeur would definitely get his opportunities. The thing is, when you're not out there playing, you just got to stay ready. And, it's going to be a long season. There's going to be ups and downs. And, when you look at the schedule, this is a tough schedule for them just out the gate.
Man, they first 8 games.
They can be 0-4, 0-5, they can be 0-6.
They can be 0-8.
That's what I'm saying. And at that point, you're going to be like, well, let's see what we got. Let's throw Shedeur out there. Let's throw,
Man, they can be 0-8.
Yeah, absolutely. This is a brutal schedule. But I expect them to beat the Bengals because the Bengals in the first few weeks.
4 games are really tough. Minnesota is.
But we don't know about the quarterback in Minnesota. I'm just thinking about the defense, and I'm thinking about Brian Flores.
Yeah, but it's a international game, and.
I guess if you look at it from that standpoint.
We'll see what the Steelers are by week 6.
I got them beating the Bengals week 1.
No, but see,
that's what the Bengals are.
You're looking at the actual teams in the schedule. All I'm looking at is the defenses that he's going to go up against, whichever quarterback going up against.
Yeah.
That's what I'm looking at. I'm looking Cincinnati's defense, they retooling. But I'm looking at Baltimore. I'm looking at Green Bay. I'm looking at Detroit.
I'm also looking at
Minnesota, Pittsburgh.
How they're going to match scoring against these offenses. I mean, Kenny Pickett is going to likely be the starter. Outside of some...
They're going to be making vacation plans by the bye.
Man, they're going to get some headaches.
By the bye, it's going to be vacation plans.
Yeah.
Maybe.
Yeah, it probably will be.
I mean, but look, they're in a crazy situation to be in. Like, to take two quarterbacks in the draft, in the same draft, is already a very unique scenario to be in, with no clear starter between the two of them either because of where they drafted both of those quarterbacks. You have Kenny Pickett, who is not really a starter in this league. He's barely a bridge guy. He's more of a backup. And Joe Flacco's at the end of his career and is there to, provide support and guidance. So it really is between, as far as a starter, Pickett and the two rookies. And I think it's just going to come down to what preseason looks like. Most of the time, we are not closely examining preseason quarterback play like that. This is going to be one of those teams where we're actually watching all of the game to see what these quarterbacks look like. And they're going to have to perform, because that's going to be the test to see who gets it. But I believe that it'll be Kenny Pickett at the start of the season. How it will go throughout the season is a completely different conversation. Subscribe here to get the latest from Speak, and go watch a few segments from our other shows on FS1.